Here's the sitch on the ATL Box Score podcast. We have on... Now, you guys might be wondering, how does a podcast that just recently started, what do I use for recording space? Well, I actually use a place called Spaces, and I go to the center that's Spaces Midtown East, and I use their resources that they have here to create my podcast and to put it out there to the world and to do other business-related things. And it's pretty much my home base to grow my business and my product that I'm developing for you guys. And if you want to check it out, I have Steve Choi with me, who is one of the regional managers who manages a lot of different centers, also with Spaces and the Regis brand, to tell you more about Spaces Midtown East.
Hey, thanks, Alex, for inviting me on the show. We love having you as well as ATL Box Score with us here at Spaces. I want to invite anybody, all your listeners, to come in and take a test drive. Let us know that Alex sent you. We'll give you a free 5-day test drive to Spaces, which is a hybrid, collaborative, and private workspace location. We're all over the world, particularly here in Atlanta. We have 5 locations, and we'll be opening 2 more soon here. So I am the area manager. Come on in. We offer private offices as well as 8,000 square feet of collaborative space for our members to come in and check it and just be productive. So again, come on in. Let us know that Alex sent you and the ATL Box Score, and we'll go ahead and set you up for 5 days free.
Well, thank you, Steve. Definitely appreciate you. Definitely appreciate your friendly staff for helping me out and giving me all the resources I need to be successful. If you want to know more about Spaces Midtown, they are just a block north from the Fox Theater. I know all you guys know where the Fox Theater is. They're just a block north from the Fox Theater, and I'm going to put the website in the show description, so you have no excuses if you're like me, trying to start your own business or your own brand. Check out Spaces Midtown East. Well, if you're listening to this, you have made it through a 4-day work week. Or if you're just chilling with us on the weekends, I hope that you're enjoying your weekend or your Friday or your commute home on Friday. You know how it can get in Cobb County at like 6 something.
Oh, man.
Or being I know Steve, you sat on 75 before.
Man. Anybody who knows, so I'm from everybody knows I'm from the Bay at this point.
That's a consistent listener.
So,
That's Steve Choi, everyone.
So, the Bay Area can get kind of crazy with traffic. And of course, LA is like notorious, and DC is also known for having bad traffic. But let me tell you, Atlanta is right up there.
Right.
And I think the real reason is because the infrastructure isn't here the same way it is as it is in some other metropolitan areas, because Atlanta is so old. But you would have thought that when Atlanta burned down, they would have built some cool roads.
You really went there. The automobile wasn't invented, or they didn't have the automobile back in those days, buddy.
Gotcha.
maybe if they survived World War II and World War II was fought here, yeah, maybe they'd think a little bit differently about that. But man, it just feels good to make it to Friday and just to talk ball. Having Shawn McEvoy. Shawn McEvoy is going to be on the show a little bit later talking about Super Bowl matchups and the Senior Bowl that's this week. And yes, it is the Reese's Senior Bowl. Okay, that always seems to fly under the radar because I feel like at this point we're kind of done with just football in general, especially hopefully if you're a Saints fan. But it doesn't seem like the Saints fans are done with football, that they actually want to redo that game or want to redo that moment and play the rest of the game towards that moment. So I thought it was hilarious, though, that there was actually an article that came out in the AJC talking about how I think you're going to like this one, Steve, that the Saints are taking the NFL to court.
Oh,
well,
really?
Yeah. Well, not the Saints organization, but a prominent lawyer in
super fans.
Right. I think we mentioned this on one of the last we had to mention this on one of the podcasts earlier this week. But it's like a couple of race players like, man, like if they're doing that, then I have some scores to settle with a couple of umps.
Nice.
So we had that drama, but Senior Bowl, we do talk. We get Sean's opinion on quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl, but Jonathan Ledbetter tearing it up. I mean, he got double teamed in that Sugar Bowl, but hopefully the Senior Bowl this Saturday in Mobile, man. Hopefully he can make up for some of that stuff that's going on.
What's John Gruden's role in this? I saw him on TV.
He's probably scouting.
Okay.
That's usually what happens it's kind of like a mini combine, sort of, that it's like you'll get FaceTime with these players and you'll get interaction and interviews and stuff like that. But this is like the beginning of the interview process.
Gotcha.
This is like the first interview.
I see.
And then you have the second interview, which is a combine. And then you have the third interview, which is like they're actually dating you at this point. And
gotcha.
It's like the first, second dates. This is like the introduction at the mixer.
Makes sense.
Be like, oh, I like you, Jonathan Ledbetter. You just tore through that offensive lineman and got to the quarterback or blew up the run. And man, I'm liking you right now. So I think I just want to hang out with you.
I want to see where this goes.
Yeah, I want to see where this goes. And then it's like I like hanging out with you. Can we not hang around? Can we just get one-on-one time and not hang around my bros? And
it sounds like a lot like The Bachelor or something.
The draft process is kind of like that.
Jonathan Ledbetter getting a rose.
But it's like there is like 1,000-something players, or maybe 100-something. Yeah, let's narrow it down, like 100-something players, and there are 32 bachelors.
Okay.
That are going to probably pick 7 to 8 people that they're going to end up with.
Makes sense.
So it's kind of like the Mormon version of The Bachelor, if you think about it that way.
Nice. The Mormon version. Okay.
And it's kind of like
big love.
Yeah. Big a lot of big love. I mean, you already have 21 wives on the team, and you have actually 90 something, so you have to add a couple more because of off-season issues, and I'm pretty sure Mormons have off-season issues too. And whatever I can say that can make sense and hopefully not offend, but we're not in that part of the country.
No, we're not.
But speaking of going out of the country, though, since we're talking about countries now.
Right.
Did you hear about Geoff Collins, the new Georgia Tech head coach? Which, by the way, I've actually met him when I covered high school football, and he's a really cool, likable guy. And I got to admire him. He'll go after players, or at least give players a visit that he has no shot at getting.
Gotcha.
But the climate is obviously Georgia, Clemson, Alabama are going to get the top pickings in this state. That's just how it is.
Right.
People. And then it seems like Georgia State gets the third or fourth hand-me-downs.
Gotcha.
And Georgia Tech has gotten kind of fifth with, but it's like that was Paul Johnson's MO.
Right.
That, hey, give me guys that don't have a lot of talent but are team guys, and I can turn them into good football players for Georgia Tech.
Makes sense.
And he did that at Tech, and it's like he's not gonna beat you with talent. He's more gonna beat you with scheme.
Okay.
But nowadays in college football, that's not necessarily the case. The scheme era, I feel like, with the spread or the different types of offense you throw out there is over. You need to load up on 4 or 5 star guys.
Gotcha.
But the scheme era of having a little bit of an edge, even though you're not getting the talent that you want, is pretty much over. And Alabama pretty much ended that discussion.
Gotcha.
So right now, Collins actually has gone on a European tour recently, and this is kind of a play. This is kind of a thing that you see in college basketball.
Okay.
That you get guys from overseas.
Yes.
Get them scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
And have them play over here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just because the difference between football and basketball is more of a fluid,
international,
right? It's more of a fluid sport over there.
Right.
That if you take a kid who's good at a high school or prep school or whatever, I know Europe's totally different.
Sure. And
you get them on your campus and everything like that. Like, yeah, the little things about boundaries and maybe playing with different balls and everything like that, basketballs. I know I saw you.
Whoa.
So are a little bit different, but it's like kids know how to drain a 3-point shot. Yeah, they know how to drive the lane.
The basics are
the basic. Yeah, the basics are the same.
I mean, like Luka Doncic.
Right, exactly.
That dude's tearing it up,
man. And the Hawks had him.
Hawks had him,
man. But with Collins, on the other hand, he's going after guys, and this is actually more of a common thing. You haven't really heard about it in the South because the top teams are getting the top talent in the South. Like, I even saw a thing on Twitter recently that talked about Kirby Smart. That Kirby Smart isn't known, that the Georgia program isn't known for as a top nationwide recruiting place. Well, guess what? At Georgia, you don't need that. You just need to win your state.
Right.
And then championships will come. I mean, Alabama's shown it. You get a lot of Georgia guys, championships will come. You get a lot of Georgia guys at Clemson, championships will come. So even though it hasn't happened for Georgia, I still feel like it could happen, but that's kind of a side note. But Penn State and Notre Dame are going after guys in Europe also. So he spent time over in Germany, in England, and he's got some potential guys. Now, I don't want to focus on who he's getting and everything like that. My opinion on this is I think this is overall a really cool thing he's doing. He's taken a page out of college basketball. And since also, too, what I don't think a lot of people realize that aren't part of the Georgia Tech community is Georgia Tech is a very international school. You get a lot of international students that come to Tech trying to get engineering degrees and then go back to their country and become great engineers, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because of a Georgia Tech degree. Excuse me. Man, it's always when I have those burps going on that I don't really want to burp into the mic. But anyways, Collins, he got this strategy when he was at Mississippi State, where it's like Ole Miss is going to get the good talent, and we're going to get the hand-me-down. So we have to figure out a way around that. We have to get, I think, when he was there, he was trying to get a lot of junior college players to come play for State. So this is very smart, and I feel like the academics that are over in Europe, especially at a place like Germany and getting guys from England, like going to Tech's probably going to be nothing, because I've always had the opinion the thing about Tech is the academic side of it. Yeah, I know Stanford could be a successful program, and you have Virginia Tech, but I just feel like Georgia Tech is a different animal than those schools. Yeah, they're on the same level academically, and maybe arguably Stanford's better academically and stuff like that, but the student limitations are a little bit different than Stanford and Virginia Tech. So the only thing that I'm not too fired up about, where it could maybe hurt Geoff Collins, is that it's like you're getting guys from Europe that it makes me wonder how long have they been playing the sport.
Right.
How
ready are they?
Right. Have you just been playing for 4 years? Because majority of these kids, I mean, that started when they were 9 years old or younger, or in some sort of flag football leagues and stuff. So how long have you been playing the sport? Or is that going to be a factor at all? Because maybe they've been playing for 4 years or 2 years in Europe, and the developmental part of it, that they're developmental projects once they get to Georgia Tech. That's one thing that concerns me. But still, I mean, raw talent is raw talent, and Collins is a great evaluator when it comes to that. He's shown that over years, and for the most part, I give props to him. It's going to be one of these things, honestly, where, and I feel like this is a totally fair opinion, that it's going to be one of these things that we're going to find out if that worked 4 years from now.
Right.
Because think about Japanese players playing Major League Baseball.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, a lot of those guys, like, sizzled out. And there was a lot of hype going in. Not that this is kind of a little bit under the radar compared to that. But I'd say as a first-year head coach, doing this experiment, why not?
Well, also, it's sort of like the comparison of what you're talking about is like European or global football, soccer, right? So they, over the last 20, 30 years, have they just now been recruiting American footballers, soccer players, because let's face facts, soccer isn't a major sport in America. So those European leagues and teams, they had to really scrutinize, and only the best of the best were able to actually make it onto a team in Europe. The rest of them play in the MLS. But you know what I mean? Like there's this one kid over there now that's like super awesome. But there's not a ton of American soccer players playing in the European leagues. Because again, we didn't foster and grow the sport like they did in Europe. So now, vice versa, what you're saying is, so that'll be interesting to see, because again, it's the same thing that you're talking about, like American football coaches recruiting from Europe, and your hesitation is how ready are they since American football isn't a thing that they do over there, like a basketball, right? And then so it's the same thing. So like European soccer leagues are reluctant to get American soccer players. It's a little different now because over the last 20 years, America's sort of increased their talent level on the soccer field. But back then, can you imagine they were like, you guys don't play soccer.
Right.
Yeah.
I really do think the academic part plays a pretty big role in this.
Right.
That we have this academic limitations, and we're not like a Georgia, we're not like a Clemson. So we have to find something different to be competitive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's why Paul Johnson brought in the triple option, because it's something no one's ever seen before. But overall, good move by Geoff Collins. We'll see 4 or 5 years from now if this pans out to be a thing. Well, since it is Football Friday here on the ATL Box Score podcast, now we have joining the conversation the quarterback whisperer himself, a fan favorite, especially if you've listened to the show for a long time. We have Mr. Shawn McEvoy joining the show today. Always fun having Shawn on. Always love talking quarterback stuff or just talking football with this guy right here. And recently, Shawn has been given the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest Instagram story. Shawn, how are you doing today, man?
Alex, man, I'm doing great. See, that's what happens when I just got too much time on my hands, You get into it and you just keep going and going.
I was like, man, I can't watch the whole thing of this. You wearing that Auburn coaches thing. You look too official there. I was like, oh man, I hope Auburn hasn't offered him the quarterback job.
I was trying to represent, man, War Eagle. But I got quite a few comments of get that jacket off, from Bulldogs fans and some Roll Tide guys in Alabama. But it was fun, man.
It's funny that when you take a stand, especially down here, or you align yourself with a certain school, things are going to come at you. So
nothing we can't handle, though, right?
Yeah, nothing we can't. Yeah. So first, I want to ask you, what was the most off the wall question that you got? And guys, just to let you know, if you don't follow Shawn on Instagram, once in a while, because he'll always post about who he's training in his training sessions, but every once in a while he'll put out a thing where he wants to get your quarterback questions, and he'll answer them on his Instagram page through his Instagram story. So if you have a quarterback question, check Shawn out on Instagram. But Shawn, what was your most off the wall, wildest question that you got through that whole series?
I appreciate it. appreciate it for, like you checking it out and, talking about it a little bit. But, this was, I feel like it was fairly tame this time around. It's funny because it's always a mix of questions you get, right? You'll get questions from like parents interested in maybe the best way to get their young quarterback started in training. You'll get the questions from other quarterback coaches and things, which are always cool. They just want to bounce ideas and, hey, this is how I'm doing it. I'd love to hear how you're teaching this one aspect. But normally it's the ones from the quarterbacks themselves, from the players themselves, that can get all over the map, right? Questions and a lot of good stuff about, what's the best way, what's the best thing I should be working on to take the biggest jump in my development. Some guys just want to know, like, hey, who's the coolest quarterback that you work with, to hang out with, or who's the best guy you've ever seen throw, and things of that nature. I got one this time around, kind of like a little bit off the wall question, was along the lines of, something that, it was a quarterback, high school kid who was asking about the difference between maybe things he's working on at the school in regards to reading coverages and maybe the way I think, they should be doing it. And that question in of itself is always an interesting one because as the question's asked, I can tell it's kind of a loaded question. And so I'm trying, more than anything, just not to come across like I'm telling the kid that he's getting bad coaching from his coach, right? I know it better, and because it's never that way. It's certainly, and the reality is that coach is working within the confines of the concepts they run and the scheme that they're looking to do. And certainly I don't have that information in anything that I'm doing. So, you always try to walk the fine line between giving a ton of advice or trying to help as best you can, but certainly not to undermine anything that his coach is doing with him currently.
Right. No, I think just to be clear, what you do is pretty much, in a nutshell, just teach throwing mechanics, ball placement. You're not trying to go into your sessions and install a certain offense. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, it's 100% right, and it's because it's just not realistic, right?
Right.
Especially in a group training session when you're talking about 10, 12 guys together, they're all running different types of offenses. I just don't feel like it's my place. Right, especially as the kids get older and they're starting varsity high school quarterbacks and they're playing in college and playing at the next level beyond that. They have really, really good coaches that are handling that part of the game with them. So we stay very general with all of that. Normally, I let the quarterback lead that, right? So if I'm working with my college guys, it'll be, okay, talk me through a couple concepts you guys are running. How is your progression? How is your coach teaching you to work through this? And then with that knowledge, then we'll run those types of concepts, get some work, fine tune maybe the footwork and some of the throwing mechanics, but within the confines of the way they do it at his school. So I think it just makes sense.
Do you ever teach 3 to 5 step dropbacks anymore?
Yeah, you don't see it as often, obviously, especially the way, quarterback play and offenses have gotten in the college and even the high school level, especially down in this area in the South. But the way we talk to it with all our quarterbacks is just, you never want to limit your options on what you're able to do. Especially if you're a high school quarterback looking at, playing at the next level and keeping your options open as far as recruiting. You'd hate to shut down, every Big Ten program that runs from under center just because you've never worked it or you don't do it in high school, so you don't try to develop those skills. And as you look all around, even teams that are primarily in shotgun, there's still opportunities maybe in the goal line or in short yardage where they go under center. And you just you want to make sure that your toolbox, as we call it, is like completely full, right? You want to be able to do every aspect of the position that you can. It's just going to make you more well-rounded and certainly make you somebody who's, has a bigger upside at the next level.
Now I'm just curious. I was going to move on, but I have to ask this. do you ever teach how to handle wild snaps? Do you ever go over that in your quarterback sessions?
I mean, it's funny. It's something that I think is worthwhile to work into whatever you're training, right? So if you're doing just throwing lines and you're working shotgun and throwing whatever rhythm routes and things of that nature, just like routes on air, if you will, then to give the quarterback a couple snaps he has to react to instead of the perfect scenario snap.
Right.
Once again, I think definitely adds some value to it. He's not going to get the perfect snap every single time on a Friday night or a Saturday playing for his team. So there's no point in training only that way. So I think anytime you can kind of make any drill you're doing as game-like as possible, so that it's more applicable to when he gets on the field, you certainly want to incorporate that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, since we talked about traditional dropbacks and the two teams that are in the Super Bowl right now kind of play with that similar style of play, so to speak, but especially the Rams on offense, since they run the ball a lot. How do you see this quarterback matchup? Because I know that if you listen to my podcast, definitely check out the one that we had Sean on breaking down all these NFL quarterbacks. I think it's Deshaun Watson is the next Michael Jordan of football. Look that podcast up because we go a little bit in depth on Tom Brady. But with Jared Goff, I know you hear this term in college, but it's like it seems like he's just a game manager. That you have Gurley, you have that other back that can get you a lot of offensive production, and you can just pick a target down the field because you run the ball so much that defenses are eventually gonna play up against you.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. Once again, I think you're just trying to set your quarterback up for success. So one of the things that I think Sean McVay's done a great job of with the Rams is knowing that he has a young quarterback, right? Guy just a couple of years out of college, and trying not to put all the pressure on him, especially as you get into the playoffs and you obviously going into a Super Bowl for the first time ever. And as the pressure starts to apply, the more he can just kind of manage the guys around him and not feel like he's got to take the whole team on his back. It certainly, sets him up in a more comfortable situation. And once again, none of this would be possible if you didn't have a really good physical offensive line up front and two just great backs. Everybody knows about Todd Gurley and all the impressive things he did in college and what his kind of upside and potential is in the NFL. But he's been kind of quiet the last few weeks, and their ability to get it done with two running backs and take a lot of the pressure off the pass game. Now, that being said, Jared Goff's made some big plays and big moments. But much like we've talked about in the past with a guy like Jake Fromm at Georgia, you got to be able to make all the throws, and Goff certainly does that in the way Fromm does. But if he doesn't have to make 40 of those throws a game because they can rely on the running game and play pretty good defense, certainly sets the team up for success.
Right. Especially going against that Patriots defense, that one of the keys there to, especially going off their offensive strengths, is trying to dominate the line of scrimmage. And I know that's easier said than done, but trying to dominate and control the game and keep Tom Brady on the sidelines.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. Here's a guy that has all the experience in the world and has shown many, many times over, and again, just last week in the AFC Championship game, that, you don't ever count them out. Unfortunately for Atlanta fans, we know that too well. And yeah, you just giving him more opportunities and more chances on the field, more often than not, he's going to continue to make that happen. And I think Rams obviously know that going in, and they're going to try to control the ball and control time of possession. And try to slow down the game as best you can. But, man, the Rams can be super explosive. I mean, you look at Goff's numbers in the regular season, he outthrew, Brady and, almost a 5,000-yard guy this year throwing, and slowed down considerably in the playoffs, hasn't played as well. But once again, they've been able to rely on the run game to find a way. So when you're that well-balanced and you can win in different ways, it should be a really good matchup here coming up next Sunday.
Yeah, it should be. What do you feel like the benefit is with having two running backs like the Rams have? Because you recently coached at Buford, and you guys had some impressive backs that you relied on in a run-heavy offense.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it's just the reality of the position now. And you're right. We were lucky to have some depth at that position at the high school level, but even more so now in college and the NFL, it's hard to take the wear and tear of running the ball 30-plus times a game. There's just very few backs that do now what, Emmitt Smith used to do and even Adrian Peterson and kind of his heyday. And, just that type of running back you don't see as much in the NFL. And I think it's two reasons. One, like I said, just the physical wear and tear, trying to keep a guy fresh, who's able to be a home run hitter every play, not worn down at the end of a long drive. But it's also maximizing skill sets. So maybe your best running back who's a downhill guy, physical guy, maybe he's not your best in pass protection, or maybe he's not your best catching the ball out of the backfield. So if you have two guys and they do different things well, you certainly can maximize. And so basically with these two running backs, you get the combination into one elite player. So no, I think that's what you're seeing. The last piece is, maybe if somebody's just having an off day, maybe he's a little banged up, maybe he's just not his normal self, and you could argue that's what you've seen out of Todd Gurley the last couple of weeks, then it's nice to have another guy there to be able to pick up the slack. Right.
Well, I think I want to have you on next week to talk about the Patriots, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course, man.
Okay. So that's the Rams piece of what Sean has diagnosed with their offense. We'll talk about Patriots next week. But obviously the big thing this weekend is the Senior Bowl down in Birmingham, and you got some quarterbacks on display, most notably, especially in this region, Jarrett Stidham, and I'm surprised that now they're letting juniors play in this bowl game, but I guess this is just the times that we live in, and I'm kind of glad that these people saw the foresight of that we should let juniors play. So, what's your assessment on the quarterbacks that are playing in the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A lot of guys that I think have a lot to prove and can really sway their draft stock one way or the other. Like you mentioned, they have started the last couple of years letting juniors in that have declared for the draft, which I think just makes sense, right?
Right, it does.
The guys that these scouts want to see. And, it's a shame guys like Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins, I think because they declared so late for the draft, they kind of missed the opportunity to get invited in, because those would have been some cool names to see there and perform on that level as well. But so the guys that are there, you talk about Drew Lock and Jarrett Stidham and Gardner Minshew and Will Grier, right? I mean, guys that throughout the season, many thought could be the top quarterback that came out, and then there's some ups and downs in their play. And so some guys that, you feel like a lot can hang on how well, not just they play in the game, but more importantly, what they look like over these few weeks of practice. I think right now, with the exception of a guy like Dwayne Haskins, who I think people still like as the best quarterback in the draft, Drew Lock is right there. And from everything I've heard so far and been watching, it looks like he's continued to just show everybody why he's so talented, right? Just really sharp, really fluid mechanically, making all the throws necessary. From from what I've seen, he seems to be as sharp as anybody there. Then you look at Will Grier, who, I think has the potential and obviously had great numbers in college. And so far, it doesn't seem like he's holding up his end here in the Senior Bowl these first couple weeks. It's been a little bit off. Watching him standing right next to guys like Drew Lock and Jarrett Stidham, you start to understand why maybe he doesn't have the same high grade that some of these other guys have. So, Jarrett Stidham, I think, is maybe the biggest question mark of anybody in the Senior Bowl, because you saw what he did in the 2017 season, and he looked like one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and then certainly had a down year this past year in 2018, but then came back and, threw for 5 touchdowns in their bowl game and spread the ball all around and looked like the Jarrett Stidham that Auburn always hoped he was going to be. So I think with a good couple weeks here of practice leading into the Senior Bowl game, he's a guy that you could see go anywhere from a third-round pick all the way up into the late first round, depending on how well he shows these next couple weeks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, with Jarrett Stidham and Drew Lock, I feel like Will Grier's kind of proved himself. I don't think it would be bad that he actually gets a couple more looks, but I see Will Grier probably going in the second round. He doesn't stand out to me like a first round guy, but I know that it's like from a fan's perspective, if you light it up on the stat sheet on Saturday, that we think, oh yeah, he's definitely, you should definitely take them. But I know like with that there's other things going on that you see as a coach and that scouts see. So what are some things that you're going to be looking for if you were a scout at Jarrett and at Drew Lock to see if they could take that next step?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they're going to look at is the off-the-field piece. They're going to spend so much time just interviewing these guys, right? Sitting down, having them talk through offensive scheme, get them up on the whiteboard, have them draw up their favorite plays and talk through the progression. This is one of the big things that these offensive coordinators and these owners look for. You think if you're taking a quarterback here in the first round, this is a guy who's going to be the face of your franchise. He's going to have to deal with a ton of adversity and a ton of pressure, whether he plays well and obviously even more so if he doesn't. You're going to need, you're asking a 20 to 22-year-old, young man to lead a team full of, 30-year-olds, right? That have been in the league 6-8 years. So that's one of the biggest, kind of question marks for any of these guys they bring in is I understand what they're able to do physically on the field. I like their skill set. They can make all the throws. But now where are they with a leadership standpoint, with their grasp of being able to learn an NFL-style offense, and kind of how quickly can they get themselves in a position to get on the field? I think a lot of these guys inside the interview room is where they really kind of make or break where their draft stock is.
So it sounds like they're just trying to look for what kind of leaders they are?
Yeah, leaders, and just try to pick up on, similar to like a job interview, right? You're getting questions like, talk to me about a time in your college career where you faced some adversity off the field and kind of how you were able to focus and work through it, right? Things of that nature, right? I want to hear about, some things that you had gone through in your life, maybe within the football program. Jarrett Stidham talk about what happened at Baylor and how he had to transfer in and learn a whole new system at at Auburn, and then the highs and lows of, beating Alabama and playing in the SEC championship game in 2017, and then maybe the lows of losing to Tennessee and how you rebound, right? Like, so if I'm an NFL, say I'm in the Giants and I pick at number 6, I know the pressures of a quarterback coming into New York. And I know that, we might struggle next season, regardless of who we get at quarterback. And I need to have a guy who isn't going to melt down when the New York papers and the media start ripping him on Monday, because he threw 3 interceptions. And so as best you can, you have to find the right guy who's able to handle that pressure. Especially if you feel like there's 3 or 4 quarterbacks who you kind of like, you feel like they have the skill set to be successful at the next level. It could be the mental makeup that makes the whole difference.
Let me ask you about this, and maybe this is just made for TV.
Yeah.
I noticed with when John Gruden, before he became the Raiders head coach, when he would do that sit-down thing on ESPN with college quarterbacks and kind of go over game film, it seemed like every opportunity he got, he would take jabs at these quarterbacks, and he just wanted to see if, like, he could rattle them some way.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's
exactly right.
Is this how these interviews usually go? Do you have someone like John Gruden that like takes shots at him just to see how he's going to react?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's like extreme or like just I'm trying to say something shocking to see how you handle it, or I'm gonna sit up there and say, man, you're terrible, like this thing, But I think there is some of that, right? You want to see how a guy responds. So any information that you can gather that helps you kind of form that opinion, it's really one of your few opportunities, and the other one will be at the combine, right? So we all know that only a few quarterbacks, 6 or 8 guys, are here at the Senior Bowl. Guys like Dwayne Haskins and Kyler Murray, they'll have their opportunity either at their pro day, at their college, or obviously at the NFL Combine. Will be more opportunities for coaches to sit down and interview them. Again, I mean, you have in those limited opportunities, you have to try to get some information in addition to what you already know from their college coaches and people that are around them. But that's your chance one-on-one to figure out. And you've heard, there was a story that came out this week about, I'm just forgetting the name of the quote. It will come to me as I'm telling the story. But one of the NFL owners, there was a quote where there was a quarterback they liked a lot, and they what's that?
No, keep on going.
Yeah, there's a quarterback they liked a lot and was going to come out and grab in the draft, but the owner met him and shook his hand, and he didn't like the way the guy's handshake was, right? And they're tracing it back. It was 3 or 4 years ago, and they're tracing it back to that's the reason why the owner didn't draft that quarterback, because he just didn't like the first impression he got, right? So you got to understand, like, there's a lot of moving parts here, and a lot of hoops that these guys, especially the quarterback position, has to jump through to be deemed worthy enough to use, especially with a top pick.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit different than getting recruited when you're a 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, because, you can miss there a little bit, right?
Right.
Colleges are going to bring in 25 guys every year, and if they miss on 8 or 10 of them, even if they miss on a quarterback, and we've seen this in the past, they can find a transfer to come in, or they can, get somebody the next year, and then they're able to live through it. But the reality is, man, you picked the wrong quarterback in the first round, and you saw Cleveland, what happened with them for like the last, 6 or 8 years, and it seems like they finally got it right now with Mayfield, and the Raiders, with swinging and missing on what everyone thought was the quarterback, and what that turned into, and obviously Derek Carr helped save that program a little bit, and it's tough. You really can't miss, especially at the quarterback position, and these guys know it.
Right. Now, I want to ask you, since there's been a lot of movement with coordinators, I just want to get your thoughts on James Koli being the Georgia offensive coordinator, because you've been out to Georgia's practices, and obviously since he's been there from Miami, and obviously you have a relationship with one of the coaches on staff. So I just want to get your thoughts and opinions on him.
Yeah, from everything I've heard and the little bit I've been around him, he's super high energy, obviously brings a lot of experience to not only coaching and training quarterbacks and helping with their development, but also being an offensive coordinator. Did that at a high level. So, When he first came on board, they wanted to bring him into Georgia. They felt like he could provide a ton of value from an offensive mindset, and also obviously as a recruiter. And at the time, because Coach Chaney was doing quarterbacks himself, he came in as a wide receiver coach. But for a lot of people around the program, they felt like his ability really could have provided value with the quarterbacks. And so it wasn't surprising when you saw Coach Chaney move over and kind of oversee the tight ends more and move Koli into quarterbacks was probably where he could have or should have been from the beginning. So obviously worked really closely with Jim Chaney the last year. They were up in the booth together, had a lot of input into what they were doing offensively. Obviously learned a lot, I think, of what Jim Chaney was doing to help keep Georgia successful with the talent they had. And I think it's going to be a super smooth transition. I think James Koli being around Jake Fromm now for a couple of years really has a great understanding of what he does well. I think you'll see that offense start to open up, be a little bit more QB-centric going into next season, knowing that you have, a top 5 quarterback at the helm. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them, really be successful and kind of high-scoring offensively.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Real quick before I forget, because I know there's people yelling at the podcast, it was Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback back in the 2014 draft.
Gotcha.
It was the Cleveland Browns owner. That was the handshake story that I was butchering earlier. So go ahead, man.
No problem. No problem. Well, just about back to James Koli and Georgia's offense. I just want to know because obviously Georgia, with the support they have, there's always going to be critics, or always going to be people wondering about the offense. The scrutiny that comes with being an offensive coordinator, does that come with the territory, or because there were some calls that Jim Chaney made at Georgia that you really kind of scratched your head about, especially the first year with Eason. You had talented running backs, and you try to take a lot of deep shots with a quarterback like that. So is that just the territory, or what's up with that type of management and those questionable calls that Jim Chaney made when he was at Georgia?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, just generally, so outside of the head coach, the easiest one to kind of point fingers at amongst coaches is the offensive coordinator, right? Not that the defensive coordinators aren't under that same, but for whatever reason, it feels like defensive coordinators, if the defense isn't playing well, it's usually put on while the players aren't doing their job or executing a high enough level. And I think it's just an understanding, right? Like the casual fan isn't going to understand what defensive alignment there is, or if they're blitzing or what coverage they're running behind it. So it's harder to pick apart and kind of criticize. But it's very easy to say, why are they throwing on 3rd and 1? They should have ran, right? Or why are they running that play when they could have done this? And so much of that criticism falls, like I said, ultimately on the head coach, but the offensive coordinator is the next one to look at. It's at the high-profile position. So, yeah, I mean, I think in the past, and you could argue when Jacob Eason first got there to Georgia, you could argue it's one of the better quarterbacks that Georgia's had in recent history, right? High skill set, big, tall, physical guy who could throw the ball a mile. And, you can't help but wonder, is Coach Chaney maybe enamored with this new toy he has, and can't wait to show it off and do some things that he felt like he couldn't do in the past. I think that's, pretty realistic. You could see why a coach would get enamored with a player in that way. And then, maybe it hurt their overall ability to score points and be as effective as they could be offensively. And maybe you could say, so when that happened, now maybe the next year, maybe it goes the other way. So maybe he's not as explosive with the quarterback, and he, felt like what he did the year previous was too wide open and wanted to scale it back and run the ball more. And now does it take the ball out of Fromm's hands in key situations, right? I think offensive coordinators, because of the criticism and because of just the way they look back and kind of self-diagnose some issues that occurred, they're always trying to evolve and adjust and be better each year. But I think now, obviously, and the biggest piece of this is just having a veteran quarter. You know, there's only so much you can do with a true freshman quarterback. It's just a reality of the position. So now he had that with Eason, kind of felt like he had it with Fromm, you know, obviously. And then finally now this year, and obviously going into next year as Koli takes over, the ability to have a veteran presence there under center is going to, you know, really going to allow them to do some different things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, shifting gears back to like where I am here in Atlanta. I mean, I'm literally like a chip shot away from Georgia Tech's campus. They hired a new offensive coordinator. I can't say his last name right now. It's going to take some practice, but let's just call him Mr. Dave because that's what his first name is. And he was Geoff Collins' offensive coordinator at Temple, and he's also been at Coastal Carolina. So with that being said, and you train a guy that is a Tech commit, I just want to know with Jordan Yates, and I know you said that he's a guy that can fit in any system, and from this article in the AJC that they put out there today, like he talks about that we're going to see what the offensive line can do and what they're skilled at, which makes sense. That's very practical because you're going to have to reshape and reform and I don't want to say scale back, but there's a lot of change happening. And he talked about that it's like we feel like we could have an advantage with a running quarterback. Well, that's in Jordan Yates's that's one of the things Jordan Yates can bring to the table. He can also throw the ball probably 30 times a game. So just from what you've seen with Temple's offense, how do you feel about him being in this new system that is probably going to look like what Temple ran last year?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you know, and I'm going to pronounce it Patnald, you know, but I'm mispronouncing it as well. But right, but we'll learn that as we go. Yeah, definitely. You know what Temple was doing and what Coastal Carolina had done for years while he was there is a very kind of pro style but spread offense, right? They like to be fast paced. I mean, it couldn't be more polar opposite than what Georgia Tech has done for the last 25 years, right? Georgia Tech was all about controlling the ball, time of possession, running the play clock all the way down, obviously under center, three backs in the backfield, running all their option looks, very little passing game, and they're going almost to the other extreme with a real fast-paced, no huddle type offense. So that's where they're going to get eventually. The interesting thing here will be how do they transition to that style and maybe how long it takes, right? Because as you alluded to, what they have now is a bunch of players that were recruiting to run the Paul Johnson offense, not this pro-style spread. So the receivers that you're recruiting, you're looking for more physical blocking type receivers, not necessarily speed guys, vertical threat guys, things of that nature. So your linemen are more offensive run type guys. They're not necessarily pass protection guys. Not that you can't be both, but their skill set certainly leans to them being better in the run game. And of course, quarterback is where you feel that the most. You know, like I said, I think Jordan Yates is a good hybrid type player for them who can really help transition from the run game as much of that as they want to do. Great. And can obviously, it's very similar actually to the offense that he ran at Milton High School here. So I think he's a guy that's going to feel comfortable, but the quarterbacks that are already on the roster, you know, were there to be running quarterbacks, to run the option and keep the ball in their hands, you know, 20 to 30 times a game and not necessarily to have to throw the football. Those are the guys where it'll be interesting to see how they develop within the system and how useful they can be as they move forward. But it'll be super interesting. You know, everybody that talks about Patnall just continues to say that he's just a really good offensive mind. And we've talked about this, prior on podcasts about the ability of really good coaches and good offensive coordinators to just maximize what they have around them, So maybe I have one quarterback who's a dual threat, and I'm going to have to get the most out of him, and I'll adapt my offense. And then when I get a 6'5", 240-pound pocket passer, I'll swing the offense back around to make sure I maximize his skill set. So, it's going to be different personnel-wise than what Pat Nog's used to in that offense. But, everybody seems to think that he's the type of guy who's going to be able to really maximize and get the most out of his players right away next year. And then it's just going to continue to evolve from there.
I was thinking, because we've talked about Tobias Oliver, and pretty much what we've seen is him just being a running quarterback. But at the same time, I've heard people that have been at Tech's practice that he's good at throwing the ball. So I'm kind of thinking, and I know maybe this is me just daydreaming a little bit like that, but you could use a guy like that to do a lot of like direct handoffs, then throw to some other guy, or use them in very non-conventional ways.
No doubt. And that goes back to like we were talking about, just let's maximize all these guys. If I got a guy who can, run and throw, then yeah, I can use him in some speed sweep stuff maybe, or I can use him as a receiver if he's got that type of skill set. But also, like you're talking from like a trick play standpoint, but I don't want it to sound like I don't think Oliver is very much in the quarterback battle here. I think he's the starter going into next year, or at least going into spring ball. You know what I mean? Like he's earned that right. He played super well, played a lot last year. So yeah, no, I think he's the guy who has the experience and has athletic enough, and that's what's going to come down to. I think is, does he throw the ball well enough, to have success within that offense, and if he does, great. I think that's good for everybody. It's good for Geoff Collins and the Georgia Tech program. It's great for Jordan because Yates gets an opportunity to develop a little bit more within that system his freshman year. But if he doesn't, then you got to start looking at what your other options are. I still think Georgia Tech has to be in the market for a grad transfer quarterback. Once again, just to add quarterback depth, not that they need something they don't already have. But at some point, I think Geoff Collins just has to find quarterbacks going forward that fit his offense more than they fit Paul Johnson's.
Or you could use Jordan on that speed sweep and throw to him.
Yeah,
So
this is the conversation that college coaches have all the time, especially with really good athletic, dual threat type players. I mean, you saw, just I bring up Auburn a lot because I watch a lot of Auburn football, but their best receiver, Ryan Davis, who broke every reception record, was a high school quarterback. Mm-hmm. Right? You look at guys like Julian Edelman, he played quarterback in college, right? So you find these guys that, are quarterbacks and then have that skill set, but that doesn't mean they can't help you in other places. I think that's where, Geoff Collins really has an opportunity to really make some headway this year, maximizing the guys he already has on the roster.
Mm-hmm. Now, just to close this conversation out, Geoff Collins and I talked about this at the beginning of the show, because you dabble in recruiting a little bit, like since you train a lot of high school guys, you have a good grasp of what recruiting looks like, and I just want to get your thoughts and opinions about Geoff Collins actually going overseas. And because apparently high school football over there has become somewhat popular in certain areas of Europe, and he's trying to get guys over there that could come over here to play ball with him. What do you think of that move?
I think anybody who's going to go all out and literally leave like no stone unturned in their search for the best players, you can't fault that at all. If it doesn't pan out, if he doesn't find anybody that's worthy, then okay, then he wasted a plane ticket and a few days of work, right? But I think he's in that unique position where he has to recruit differently than everybody else.
Right.
And he has to change the perception of these high-level athletes of what playing at Georgia Tech is,
Right.
And what it's going to be going forward. So the reality is right now, within the state of Georgia, he's probably not going to be able to pull in top 4-star, obviously 5-star type skill players. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Those guys are going to always still go to the Georgias and the Auburns and the Alabamas and, the other big schools all over the country.
Clemson's.
So he can't compete with some of those other schools. He's going to have to try to do something different. So maybe that's, finding guys who haven't played a lot of football. Maybe they're track guys or maybe they're tall guys who play basketball and try, that we've seen that work in the past. Or like you said, maybe it's guys overseas. They aren't getting the same opportunities, the same looks. Maybe a guy that Georgia didn't see, and now Geoff Collins can get a steal on a really good, talented player. So, certainly not the prototypical way of doing it. I don't know how successful it will be, but you certainly can't fault the guy for trying.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, thanks for being on the show today, Sean. Where can we reach out to you on social?
Yeah, Instagram, like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, doing a ton on there. That's at QB Coach McEvoy, and got a ton of great feedback from that literally marathon Insta story I did. So I think it's going to be something that I start doing every Wednesday. So every Wednesday, you can kind of get your questions in and find me on Instagram, and we'll keep that going. But yeah, and same thing on Twitter, QB Coach McEvoy on Twitter. Definitely want to connect.
Okay, I guess if you get a bigger audience, it's going to turn into a Facebook Live type thing.
Who knows, right, man? As long as we're generating the content, we'll see.
Okay, well, great talking with you, Sean, today.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon, Alex.
All right. Now we just want to end the show with some Super Bowl info because we had a fun time with this on our latest podcast that's up, talking about Super Bowl events and private Super Bowl events. So we just want to keep you guys informed, and since we're reaching out to the Atlanta market, I know some people listen in Florida and Germany, for example, because I look at the data. But you know what? Our market that we're reaching out to is the Atlanta market. So I know you guys are interested in checking out some concerts, especially some free ones.
Absolutely.
So
I am. We're in our backyard. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, when's the next time this is going to happen?
March Madness next year.
But Super Bowl is Super Bowl.
But okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying if you miss this, I mean, it's not going to be as extensive.
Right.
But it's like if you want to hold out for free concerts,
right.
The national championship for March Madness, they're going to have the same thing. So on Thursday, January 31st, you have the EA Bud Light Super Bowl Music Fest. So, Steve, who's going to be playing?
The EA Sports Bud Light Super Bowl Music Fest is going to be off the chain. You've got Atlanta's own Ludacris. Okay? He's hosting it. Then you got, Sierra, which is Russell Wilson's wife.
Oh, I didn't know Sierra was married
That's
to Russell
right.
Wilson.
That's right. See, football ties. So Russell Dub is going to be up in the house, right?
Sierra.
You got the Migos, Lil Yachty, Lil Baby, and Lil Jon. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, that was my Lil Jon impression. Prices are $50 to $500 the State Farm Arena.
Actually, that's not bad now that you mention all those lineups.
No. That's going to be lit.
That is going to be lit.
And then, so.
Well, then it's like you have Zach Brown Band, and there's not really like a location for that. I mean, I'm assuming it might be in State Farm.
It says Pandora's Live Series, and it's free and open to the public. So maybe they're just like...
Maybe that's at the Centennial Olympic Park.
Probably.
Comment in the comment section if you know where Pandora Live is.
And if you want to go.
True.
I have a ticket for you.
Glad you do, buddy. So, what's going on with the Super Bowl gospel?
Of course, no Super Bowl weekend would be complete without a gospel celebration, right? And so the 20th annual event is going to be hosted by Ricky Smiley. We all
I've
know
heard of
Ricky
him.
Smiley, local celebrity and radio personality. And it features Lecrae, Kirk Franklin, Tasha Cobbs Leonard, the Winans, and the Super Bowl Gospel NFL Players Choir.
Super Bowl gospel NFL choir.
And I guess they're going to tape it live, and then it's also going to air on BET,
Interesting.
but it's sold out.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, sorry, you guys can't go to that one. What about Little Baby?
Little Baby is also going to be playing with Gunna at the where are they playing here? Oh, looks like it's at College Park.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's the College Park native is Gunna, and it's called the official big game kickoff at 10 p.m. for $50 to $200 in the Gold Room at West Piedmont Road.
Mm-hmm. On Friday, February 1st, you got some Aerosmith action going on.
Aerosmith and Post Malone.
Who's Post Malone?
Congratulations.
Oh, that guy. I love that song.
I think we got to go.
I'm getting to that age where I just don't keep up with the celebrities anymore. I probably should.
This is at State Farm too.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it's $125 to $375 a ticket. That's a steal.
I guess so, yeah.
Congratulations.
That's not the VIP, but now Shaq's Funhouse.
Shaq's Funhouse.
Shaq's
At the Battery.
Oh, yeah. Let me do that impression again.
Do it. Do it.
This is where we are playing at Shaq's Funhouse.
Okay. Welcome to Shaq's Funhouse. We're going to have fun in his house. So that's why I call it the Funhouse.
Doing it at the Battery.
Hey, my name's Shaq. So that's why it's called Shaq Funhouse.
We do it at the Battery. We do it big.
Bingo and Twizzlers. All right, so yeah, that is going to be. Oh, this is going to be off the chain. So this is Shaq's Funhouse, with his alter ego, DJ Diesel. So Shaq's going to be behind the ones and the twos himself.
Oh my gosh! Like,
Y'all ready to party? I got the ones and the twos. The house is fun.
So he's had a lot of like side hustles.
Man, Shaq is a man of many skills and talents.
I feel like Shaq's a guy that tries out a lot of things.
I think Shaq, what I love about Shaq is that Shaq never takes himself too seriously.
Right.
So I like Shaq.
I do too.
I'm down for him.
Right.
If I can get into that party, Shaq, if you're listening, I'd love a ticket.
That Shaq's Funhouse.
At the house, that's fun.
You have a better impression than I do.
So Tiesto is going to be there. Lil Jon again. T-Pain. So
Little John's got a pretty busy
yeah.
couple
What I'm
of days.
noticing is like these guys are like basically they're just making excuses to go from one party to the next. Like, yo, but it's like Cirque du Soleil is going to be there. Like acrobats. Like wow, fire breathers. And I'm just like that might be the lick, man.
Right.
I mean that's close to home for me.
That is close to home.
And so, and if I can't make it out, if I'm too, let's call it excited from partying, I might be able to crash at the Spaces.
Spaces Battery. That is an option.
Yes, it is.
You know how to get the keys from?
Right. Yes. So, Oh, yeah. So what else we got, buddy?
We got
There's just a ton of different side concerts like Diplo, Tiesto himself again.
You got Martina McBride.
Okay.
That's actually at the Cobb Galleria.
Okay.
Which is near the Battery.
Which is going to be competing with Shaq's Funhouse.
Right.
Oh, Martina McBride.
Right.
Can come over.
So it's like you go from Shaq's Funhouse to Martina McBride, and then you can crash at the Battery.
Now this one I want to go to.
What's that?
Foo Fighters and Run the Jewels.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that free?
No, it is. It's sold out, man. It's at Atlantic Station.
You have Bruno Mars too in B card.
Yeah,
Card B.
Cardi B.
I've read that wrong.
She could be called B card too. She could definitely pull the B card out. Cardi B, and Bruno Mars, $200 to $1,100. Oh man, that's a lot of money.
Talked about the Sports Illustrated night in the last podcast.
Yeah, with Snoop Dogg and Lil Wayne.
Got Terry.
Trey Songz and Jeezy. Yep.
Why did I say Terry?
Lil Baby again, Cascade. I mean, you got these little side hustles, and then on the game day.
Oh, you got Future.
Future
on the game day.
Yeah. So on the game day, we got the Maxim pregame experience. Snoop Dogg is back as DJ Snoopadelic. So he's going to be.
So Snoop Dogg's trying to be a DJ too.
Yeah. Well, so basically, let me tell you, this is how you are a DJ. You just play your playlist on your iTunes, and now you're a DJ.
But just have a MacBook and
yeah. That's how Snoop Dogg is not sitting there trying to figure out what songs to queue up. He's like, hey, y'all, I'm going to play this playlist. And don't be surprised if half of the songs are Snoop and Dre. But you're like, okay. So it's $399. And that's over at Stats.
Oh, yes.
Marietta Street.
Stats is downtown.
Right?
Near the
Future will be
Mercedes
playing the
Dome.
Big Game Grand Finale, which will take place under the direction of Jumpman at 10 p.m. game day. So after the game, the grand finale, $50 to $200 at the Gold Room, and then the Super Bowl Grand Finale, which is being dubbed as ATL Super Bowl Takeover, which makes sense because it's got Migos, Lil Baby, Gucci Mane, and Pierre P. Thomas, and that's at 10 p.m. at the Compound.
The Compound.
And that's $50 to $200.
That sounds very friendly.
Yeah.
The Compound.
Man, there's another. Hey, it's gonna be off the chain. There's another finale segment of the show, and it's Cardi B herself, and she's gonna make an appearance at the Mansion Elan off Claremont Road.
The Mansion Elan.
And it's $100 to $500. Steve Choi will also be throwing a Choi to the World party, where we serve dumplings. You got we're gonna be serving some Asian dumplings, and it's VIP, super VIP.
And no plastic.
No plastic, no cups. Super VIP.
We have demonstrations on how you throw a grenade.
That's right. It's gonna be the Choice to the World Super Bowl.
You have to turn in your cell phones. No social media
No
stuff.
social media. Better be wearing hemp clothes. I don't.
Got to be wearing those hemp NFL jerseys.
That's right.
They have to be economically friendly.
Joy to the world. Yeah. So come on down. I'm not going to disclose where that's going to be. It's a secret spot.
Secret spot.
Only super VIPs get invited.
Right. We're
going to be watching the game, throwing down.
We're going to be like that Christmas movie with Seth Rogen. Where you just find a invitation.
Oh, nice. I
secretly
should throw a super Throwdown SmackDown and invite Shaq to DJ with me.
Yeah.
Joy to the world.
Let's do it, baby.
Shaq on the ones and twos.
Let's do it, baby.
Can I have some dumplings?
And ATL Box Score is just there for exposure to get the name out. So
Right. We'll do a podcast from the party.
right.
What?
Yeah, we have the mics to do it.
Cool,
So.
boss. What up?
So, guys, that's our show. And so we just want to thank Steve Choi on the ones and twos. And Shawn McEvoy for joining the podcast today. And like us, subscribe to us wherever you see us, because we're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, on the mainstream podcast outlets. So be sure to subscribe to us there. If you're interested and you're interested in new things and seeing how new things can grow, I'm going to put my Patreon account out there to check that out. Giving you guys a detailed history about my sports broadcasting career. And so we just want to thank you guys for tuning in, especially if you're looking for something different than Sports Talk Radio. Also, see us in the comment section about any quarterback questions you have for Sean, or how you feel about Geoff Collins, or the Super Bowl concerts that we talked about. So just hit that up in the comment section, and we will hopefully we'll hear you. Yeah, hopefully that you'll be a listener to our next show. So thanks again. This has been Football Friday. I'm Alex Berger, and we are out. Episode 22 is out.